The king demanded they be destroyed after her death, dismantled, scattered, never to be worn by another woman, but she refused. And in 1987, every forbidden jewel went to auction, $50 million, 214 pieces, and secrets the royal family spent decades trying to bury. This is Wallis Simpson's collection, the jewellery that cost a king his throne. December 10th, 1936. King Edward VIII stood before microphones and renounced the British throne to marry Wallis Warfield Simpson. Edward became the Duke of Windsor, Wallis became the Duchess. And together they lived in exile, banned from England, stripped of royal duties, cut off from the family Edward had abandoned. But Edward found another way to crown his wife. Not with a tiara from the royal vaults, those were forbidden. Instead, he commissioned the greatest jewellers in the world, Cartier, Van Cleef and Arpels. And over 35 years he built Wallis a collection that rivaled any queen's. Every piece inscribed. Every design is bespoke. Every gemstone is chosen to send a message. The palace watched and seethed, because these weren't just jewels, they were acts of defiance, written in diamonds, rubies and emeralds. Today we're unlocking the most spectacular pieces, the ones that reveal exactly what the Duke and Duchess of Windsor wanted the world to see. October 27th, 1936. Edward was still king. Wallis was still married to Ernest Simpson, but Edward had made his choice. He commissioned Cartier London to create an engagement ring, not with a diamond, with an emerald, 19.77 carats, cut from a massive stone Jacques Cartier himself sourced in Baghdad during the 1930s. The original emerald was the size of a bird's egg. Cartier cut it in half, sold one half to an American millionaire. The other became Wallis's engagement ring. Emeralds are soft, they scratch easily. Jewelers rarely use them for engagement rings because of the risk. But Edward didn't care about tradition. He wanted something bold, different, unmistakably not royal protocol. Inside the band, an inscription in Edward's handwriting. We are ours now, 27th of October, 1936. The date he proposed. Before the abdication, before the scandal became public, before the world knew, this ring was Edward's private promise. We belong to each other, no matter what comes next. Wallis wore it for 22 years. Then in 1958, she returned to Cartier, had the ring completely redesigned. The original setting was platinum and minimal. The new version, yellow gold, surrounded by several diamonds. More modern, more Wallis. The emerald remained, the inscription remained, but the look evolved. At the 1987 Sotheby's Geneva auction, this ring became one of the most sought-after lots, not just for the 19-carat emerald, for the story carved into its band, for the date that marked the beginning of the greatest love scandal of the 20th century. June 19th, 1936. Wallis's 40th birthday. Edward, still king, walked into Van Cleef and Arpels in London. He carried a velvet pouch. Inside, rubies, dozens of them, collected during his tour of India in 1921 and 1922 when he was Prince of Wales. For 15 years, these stones sat in palace vaults, royal property, part of the Crown's collection. But Edward wanted them for Wallis. He commissioned Van Cleef and Arpels to create a necklace. Something spectacular, something worthy of a queen. The jewellers delivered. A cascade of rubies and diamonds in platinum, designed specifically for Wallis's long, elegant neck. Edward supervised every sketch, approved every stone placement. This wasn't a jeweller's vision. This was his. Wallis wore the necklace, but she wasn't satisfied. Years later, she returned to Van Cleef and Arpels, worked with designer Renee Sim-Lacaze. Redesign it, she instructed. Make it bigger, more dramatic. Lacaze incorporated the original rubies and diamonds, then added more stones. The new design featured rows of rubies and diamonds intertwined, ending in a spectacular cascade of rubies that fell like a waterfall, platinum setting, Art Deco geometry, pure 1930s. Glamour reimagined for the 1950s. This necklace wasn't just jewellery, it was a statement. Edward used crown rubies for a woman the crown rejected, and Wallis wore them proudly for decades. At the 1987 auction, this necklace sold for $2,603,308, the most expensive piece in the entire collection, not because of the ruby's size, because of their source. Stones meant for a queen, worn by a woman the palace called unacceptable. That's the defiance Wallis Simpson wore around her neck. 1952. Paris. Wallis Simpson walked into Cartier's Place Vendôme boutique. She had an idea, a vision, something no one had created before. "I want a panther," she told Jeanne Toussaint, Cartier's legendary jewellery designer. "But not stiff, not rigid like a bangle. I want it to move, to drape, to feel alive on my wrist." Toussaint understood immediately. For weeks she worked with Cartier's master craftsmen, engineering a bracelet that defied jewellery convention. The result? A fully articulated panther, the body platinum, set with brilliant cut diamonds in pavé. The spots, calibré cut onyx, precisely shaped to create the panther's distinctive markings. The eyes, marquise-cut emeralds, green fire staring from a diamond face. But the genius was in the mechanics. Each segment of the panther's body connected with invisible hinges, allowing the bracelet to curve, to wrap gently around Wallis's wrist, not stiff, fluid, alive. When Wallis wore it, the panther moved with her. Caught the light, with every gesture, became an extension of her body. This wasn't decoration, this was sculpture. Cartier called it the Panther bracelet. Wallis called it her signature. She wore it constantly, to dinner parties, state events, casual lunches in Paris. The panther became synonymous with the Duchess of Windsor, a symbol of her sleek, dangerous elegance, her refusal to be tamed by exile. When Wallis died in April 1986, speculation began immediately. What would happen to the panther? Edward had insisted before his death in 1972 that Wallis's jewellery should never be worn by another woman. He wanted it destroyed, dismantled, scattered. But Wallis's will is specified differently. Everything would be sold. Proceeds to the Pasteur Institute in Paris, a hospital and research centre. Gratitude to France, the country that gave them refuge. April 1987. Sotheby's, Geneva. The Cartier Panther bracelet went to auction. The Franklin Mint purchased it. $1,270,000. 23 years later, in 2010, it sold again. This time, $7.4 million. The price had increased by nearly $6 million in 2 decades. Because this wasn't just a bracelet anymore. It was history, defiance, a panther that refused to be caged, just like Wallis herself. 1940, June. Wallis's birthday approached. Edward commissioned another piece from Cartier. He collaborated directly with Jeanne Toussaint again. The design, a flamingo, standing on one leg, whimsical, playful, utterly unlike traditional royal jewellery. Toussaint created magic in platinum. The flamingo's body, head, neck, and legs, pavé-set diamonds, hundreds of them, catching light from every angle. One eye, a sapphire, bright blue, watching. The beak, yellow citrine cabochon and blue sapphire, complementary colours, unexpectedly. The tail feathers, a riot of colour, emeralds, rubies, sapphires, arranged to mimic the flamingo's natural plumage, the brooch was completed just in time. June 19th, 40, Wallis received it as her birthday gift. 2 weeks later, Nazi forces invaded France. The Duke and Duchess fled, first to Spain, then to Portugal, eventually to the Bahamas where Edward served as governor. The flamingo came with them. Photographers captured it. The exotic bird perched on the exiled Duchess's shoulder. A splash of colour during the darkest days of World War II. After the war, Wallis wore the flamingo frequently. It became one of her favourite pieces, not because of its value, because of what it represented. Beauty in chaos, whimsy during darkness, survival. The flamingo stood on one leg, vulnerable, balanced, refusing to fall, just like Wallis and Edward during exile. At the 1987 auction, the Cartier flamingo brooch attracted intense bidding. It sold for an undisclosed amount, but estimates placed it in the hundreds of thousands. Today, it's considered one of Cartier's most iconic Art Deco animal jewels. A flamingo that fled the Nazis and became a symbol of resilience. This is the most personal piece in Wallis Simpson's entire collection. Cartier crafted it in platinum and diamonds, but the crosses tell the real story. Each cross suspends from the bracelet chain, each rendered in different coloured gemstones: sapphires, emeralds, rubies, aquamarines, amethyst, and each cross engraved. Not with prayers, with dates, locations, moments, private inscriptions marking significant events in Wallis and Edward's relationship. The first cross, God Save the King for Wallis, the date Edward visited Wallis in Cannes before they married. Another, Wallis and Edward, and another one, Our Marriage Cross Wallis. This bracelet functioned as a chronicle, a timeline worn on Wallis's wrist. She wore it on her wedding day, June 3rd, 1937, Château de Cande, France. The crosses clinked softly as she said her vows. A quiet reminder of everything that brought them to that moment. Cartier added crosses gradually. Over 10 years, as the Duke commissioned new ones to mark new memories. By 1944, 9 crosses completed the bracelet. Some historians call it a religious piece, but that misses the point. These weren't symbols of faith in God. They were symbols of faith in each other. Each cross a promise kept, each date a battle survived, each gemstone a year of exile endured together. Wallis wore this bracelet constantly, even in private, even when no photographers were watching. It wasn't for show. It was for her. At the 1987 auction, the cross bracelet sold to a private collector. This bracelet proves something the palace never wanted acknowledged. That Wallis and Edward's love wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a weakness. It wasn't a mistake. It was real. Memorialised in platinum, diamonds, and coloured stones. And it lasted 35 years. Until Edward's death in 1972. April 1987. Sotheby's, Geneva, the sale of the century. 214 pieces of Wallis Simpson's jewellery collection. Every jewel Edward commissioned. Every piece Wallis wore during 35 years of exile. Proof that the king who gave up his throne never regretted it. Proof that Wallis wore his love every single day. And 50 years after the abdication, when her collection sold for $50 million, one thing became clear. History remembers the woman who changed everything. Subscribe for more deep dives into royal jewellery that stays hidden in the vaults. And drop a comment. Which piece do you like most? Thanks for watching. See you next time.